Hello and welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Ciarán McLoughlin from WhoScored and the legend of the game, Jonathan Wilson. We're going to start with the Champions League, Ciarán, and you've got the team of the round for us, and you've already spoiled the surprise a little bit for Jonathan and myself. I'm not going to quite spoil it for the viewers and listeners, but there is a shock in this team.
Yeah, so Champions League team around, players had to play a minimum of 2 appearances, so both legs. And we've gone for a 4-4-2. Starting in goal, we've got Andre Onana. The back four, Giovanni Di Lorenzo, Dayot Upamecano, Kim Min-jae, and Kingsley Coman. Midfielder, Riyad Mahrez, Joshua Kimmich, Piotr Zielinski, and Vinicius Jr. And up front is Goncalo Ramos and Victor Osimhen.
I mean, I thought the omission was going to be the biggest thing, but Jonathan, Kingsley Coman's playing left back. Who's good?
Behind what's already a very, very attacking midfield. Is this the algorithm or is this Garth Crooks?
he must be in charge of it this week. Garth Crooks has been given a guest appearance on the algorithm.
I guess because Coman played wing back, I guess that's the excuse, but come on.
Flat back four, come on.
I mean, that with Zelensky in the middle of the midfield and two wingers. Who was on the left? Oh, you had Vinicius Jr., who's not really a good midfielder. And you had Mahrez on the right, was it?
Yeah.
Kieran doesn't care. He's happy with it.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very attacking.
But no Haaland. So it was Osimhen and Ramos.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Osimhen was brilliant in both legs. What rating did Haaland get? I guess he didn't get a big rating first leg. Is that the problem?
First leg he got only a 6.47.
Loser.
That's what's let him down.
Yeah, but he got a 10, did he, this week?
He got a 10, yeah. Ramos got a 10 last week for his hat-trick.
Yeah.
So at least I suppose there is valid reasons for him not making the team of the round. I was just thinking at the start, this is going to be the team from the week of Champions League football, basically, but obviously I've got that wrong.
But this is what happens when you make yourself a slave to the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, five goals, not bad. Not bad in one game, is it?
The odd thing about them is that 4 of those goals came from corners. I mean, one of them a penalty after a corner, but 4 of them from corners, which you don't think of as being a City trait. And I think that's something. I mean, this is, I guess, more of a Premier League issue, but Arsenal are really dangerous from set plays. We saw at Fulham the opening goal there, where they had the 6 men behind the back post, all running forward, which to try and confuse the zonal marking. Tottenham have now got their set piece coach, which certainly early in the season was paying dividends, and City have clearly focused on that as well. So it does seem that maybe top sides have realised set plays is something they've been neglecting, and that's an avenue where they can get an edge.
I guess it does help when the goalkeeper's playing volleyball and he's teeing it up for you every time to knock the ball in the back. And they did feel very much like
you could see why he was second choice, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But that was the thing about that performance. Look, they were brilliant. They were incredibly ruthless. But the penalty's a joke.
It's a terrible decision.
It might technically be a penalty under the laws, but the laws are an absolute ass, and that certainly would not be given in the Premier League. And there was nearly another one for Real Madrid last night. The very late shot that who was it? It hit his thigh and was it Tsimikas? It was, wasn't it? Hit his thigh and bounced onto his arm. I mean, we just know in the Premier League if it hits your body and goes under your arm, not a foul.
You say that, Jonathan. Villa have conceded a penalty this season with that happening against Fulham.
And they shouldn't. Yeah.
No.
I think with it's almost like they've got the technology and they feel they have to use it. But the point should be, I think the guiding principle in all these things is, did the player try to cheat? And you can't say that Henrik's tried to cheat.
No, it's awful. It's an awful decision.
I mean, he didn't even seem to know that the ball hit his arm, which I think is entirely possible. You jump with somebody, there's a bit of contact with the bodies, and the ball bobbles down off you. You don't really know what's hit what.
It was a brush, I would say. I don't think it even hit him. It was a brush.
Yeah. So I mean, a very, very soft penalty. I mean, and to be fair to City, Henrik's, to be fair, I think he got away with one in the first leg where he sort of passed the ball away. But still, it's a really soft penalty. I don't think it necessarily is a foul for the second goal, but certainly you've seen them given the Haaland challenge on the keeper. There is just a little bit of contact afterwards, and often you see the player who's made the challenge, when the player clearing the ball carries on into him, that it's given as a free kick. And Ederson, I think, was incredibly lucky to get away with that challenge. I know the ball may have brushed his knee, but it's a really dangerous challenger with this foot at waist height, which it's certainly a yellow card. It might be a red card, not for denying a goal scoring opportunity, but for serious foul play. So they got decisions early on, and then Leipzig capitulated, and then City were ruthless. So I wouldn't be reading huge amounts into it, brilliant as they were.
No, what's annoying though, from all those decisions that you've just talked about, it's like VAR get involved in the one that's the least controversial of all of them. That handball, because it kind of brushes his hand rather than hits it.
Yeah,
if it's aimed at that, but they don't get involved in the ones you would think that they would get involved in.
The really telling thing, I think, is that Rodri, who's 2 feet from it, doesn't flicker. He doesn't think it's a penalty. It never occurs to him it's a penalty. So yeah.
They'd have gone through anyway, wouldn't they? They were far superior.
Yeah, far superior
to Leipzig. It doesn't really
far
matter.
Superior in the first half of the first leg, and then far superior in both halves of this leg. So yeah, they've won 7-0. Quibbling about the first couple of goals is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, and Ciarán, you sat there in what looks like Mudrik's bedroom there. You've made your allegiances quite clear this morning. I guess you think Manchester City should concentrate on the Champions League and kind of leave the league alone. Let's try and win the Champions League this season.
Yeah, 100%. Best opportunity, I think. But no, I mean, I think it's going to be quite interesting tournament. I think this is coming to that business end of the season where teams are going to have to start taking priority in either the league or the Champions League, not just Man City, of course. I think there's a number of teams, obviously Inter Milan, potential underdogs. They're a good 18 points off Napoli. Napoli themselves, they're still in it. Do they say the league's done and go for Fulham for the Champions League? So I think we're at a very interesting point in the Champions League. But I think Man City need to go full on for it. Get knocked out in the semi-final and let Arsenal win the league.
I mean, I'm sure Arsenal fans will love the sound of that. Arsenal fans who found a historic clip of me talking absolute rubbish on this podcast last week and gave me a lot of Twitter abuse. So let's be nice about Arsenal. I hope Arsenal win the league. Jonathan, who do you think is going to win the Champions League? If you had to pick one team out, who would you pick? I know we don't know the draw at the moment, but if you had to pick one, who would you pick?
Probably City, but I don't know. I'm slightly torn because I don't think anybody apart from Napoli is playing particularly well in Europe at the minute. I think there's question marks against Bayern. I think there's question marks about Real Madrid, who are the second and third favourites, I think. City, we've seen in the league, have been a little, by their standards, not quite what they can be. But I don't think there's such a depth of teams playing well this season as has been in the past. Napoli, I think, are the team playing best at the minute. And they may benefit from the fact that their league is essentially done and dusted. But on the other hand, the danger is that the celebrations from that end up deflecting them from the Champions League. But they are able to rest players in the league now because they are going to win Serie A. I now think City, but it's Napoli probably the team playing best right now.
Yeah, 3 Serie A representatives will be in the last day at a time where obviously Serie A, with Napoli being so far ahead, it doesn't feel that strong. So it is a strange Champions League this season. I think if I had to pick a team, I know you're saying they've got weaknesses, but I still wouldn't be able to look past Real Madrid. I just think they're so efficient and so ruthless when it comes to the Champions League. They just know what they're doing.
Well, that's the thing with Real Madrid, that I didn't think they were particularly impressive last season. Yeah, they were impressive in 15, 20-minute bursts here and there. And against Liverpool, that first leg, they scored 5 of their 7 chances. I think they had more chances last night than they had in the first leg.
Yeah, couldn't score last night.
And they look very open. Liverpool, if they'd been in the old Liverpool, you think we would have taken more chances, and they wouldn't have been quite so. They wouldn't have capitulated in the way they did when they went 3-2 down. So that game was lost for Liverpool in the second half of the first leg. But I don't think. I mean, you sort of think, Real Madrid had beaten Liverpool, the team had beaten the final last year. They beat them 6-2 in aggregate. I didn't feel it was as dominant as that. But then last season, I kept saying this about Real Madrid, and they kept on doing enough to get through. And I guess if you have brilliant players and a basic structure, that can be enough.
Yeah, I think their defence is really strong. Midfield just knows what they're doing. The likes of Modric and Kroos and whoever they play with them, and then you keep Benzema and Vinicius Junior fit. You've always got a chance. I can't look past them. Ciarán, if you want to pick a team.
Well, I mean, when the draw was first made for the last 16, I said whoever wins from Bayern Munich and PSG would go on to win it. And according to our ratings, Bayern Munich are the best team left in the competition. So I feel like you can never write them off. I think more time than not, the last few years, they've always generally the favourites to win it, even though they've not won it since I think it was 2020. But if I had to pick a team, I'd probably say Man City. Unfortunately, I think they might get Guardiola might get that last jewel in the crown at City.
He'll certainly won it, won't he? You'd have thought they'd have probably won it by now. Some of the exceptional teams that they've had, but yeah, that you know what, that'd be close. Obviously, this season, won't they? It'd be interesting to see the draw. I think the draw will have a clearer picture of what's going on when the draw's made. Let's look then at the weekend a little bit, and we've got Man City v Burnley to start as Vincent Kompany, the legend of Manchester City, returns to his old team. Jonathan, is he a successor to Pep when Pep finally calls it a day at Man City? The style he's got going at Burnley at this early stage in the club's development and his development as a manager, it's a big change. They're absolutely flying though, in that they seem to be playing his way every single week, and the sound bites that you hear, the video clips that sometimes come out of him talking to his players, he does look the real deal.
Yeah, I don't think he has said that at Anderlecht, but this season, though, Burnley have been the best team in the Championship by a million miles. And I think had that been a sort of continuation of the Dyche method, you'd have said, oh, well, you just sort of start the engine again and let it run. But he hasn't. He's completely changed how they play. They've only lost twice all season in the league. They're averaging, I think, 2 goals a game now. Playing really, really good football. What are they now? 13 points clear, I think. They're clearly going to be promoted. They've been the best team in the Championship. I think they play in a really interesting way. That you look at something like Ashley Barnes, who seemed ideal for the Dyche method, but he's actually had a really good season, albeit he's only scored 5 goals. But playing that centre forward role, bringing the wide players into the game. So Nathan Teller, who got a hat-trick against Hull last night, 17 goals for the season, coming in from wide. Anas Sarawi on the other side, I think he's got 6 goals now. But it is that in the same way that City had that attacking threat from across the forward line, so Burnley have that. The one slight sort of worry for them, I guess, at the weekend is Brownhill probably being out, and he's been really good in midfield for them. So that means Joe Goodmanson dropping a bit deeper, which does mean they have to change things. So I think Terrell will have to play more centrally, and then maybe Vitinho coming in wide. And Josh Cullen, who was at Anderlecht under Kompany, he's had a really good season in central midfield. So yeah, they're really good to watch. I'd be amazed if they beat City at the weekend, but it's an interesting game to see that sort of master-apprentice relationship, and to see just how close Burnley can push City.
Because Burnley are pretty much up, Ciarán, so they'll go there, 1, full of confidence, 2, in good form, but 3, I guess there is nothing to lose for them, really. That they'll just go there, play their game, and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they're up against a Premier League side who are the champions still at the minute, and obviously fighting for the title. They're still Championship side, only relegated last season. But they'll obviously have their eyes on that promotion place. But as Jonathan said, they're 13 points clear. You do imagine they will most likely go on to win the Championship. But these cup runs, it's what fans crave for the most. So they'll want a good result on the weekend. But interestingly enough, it's quite a rarity for any team to go all the way in the cup and get promoted. It's not happened since 1931. Apparently, West Brom, the last side to do it, to do both. It'll definitely be one they'll want to get a result at, especially away from home at Man City, and Kompany to get one over Guardiola.
Just wanted to talk a bit about Nathan Teller, Jonathan, going really well at Burnley, having a stupendous season for them, 17 goals, I think it was, that you just said. We turn our attention to the Premier League a little bit. There's his parent club, Southampton, at the bottom of the league, completely struggling for goals. Someone who never really had a chance to play there, Nathan Teller. They probably do with someone like him wide.
I guess the Southampton argument would be that they brought in a lot of young forwards, and he's another young forward. He's slightly older than he's not a kid. He's 23, I think. But yeah, you sort of. I also think when you get to a player who is sort of 22, 23, 24, is there actually any point in continuing to loan them out? You look at somebody like Nathan Broadhead, who Everton keep loaning out. I think it's 24 now. He was at Sunderland last season, at Wigan this season. And you think, well, how much more is he going to develop? If he's not good enough for the Premier League club now, what are you keeping him for? You do wonder whether Southampton are thinking, well, we might be going down and Taylor can score goals in the Championship, so we'll have him back next season for the promotion charge. But I sort of think that, once you're getting into your early 20s, you probably need to be getting more permanent deals, not just being loaned out everywhere. It's easy to say with hindsight that Southampton could do with him, but they do have a lot of young forwards.
That loan at Burnley, it'll either make them money because Burnley will want to sign him if they go up, or they'll have an effective player ready for the top half of the Championship, bottom half of the Premier League. So there is
that financial thing that sometimes players end up hanging around, just getting loaned out because the club can't find anybody to sell them to at the right price. So they hold on until the price is right, which I think has happened with Batshuayi, for instance, at Chelsea.
You always know it's pre-season when he's playing for Chelsea.
Yeah. Marco Marin was there for ages as well. Would pop up in a couple of pre-season friendlies and then disappear off to some German Bundesliga 2 side. It can be I don't think it's healthy for anybody. It must be a nightmare for those players and their families that every season it's just, all right, go to this city, go and play, set yourself up, get your kids in school, get your wife a job, come back again, go somewhere completely different next year. It's not an easy way to live a life.
No, he seems to be enjoying himself this season in particular. Let's talk a bit about Kevin De Bruyne, Ciarán. I don't know whether you've got the underlying statistics there, but Pep saying that he's not doing the simple things. His pass success rate has gone down, but he's still consistently creating chances and involved in a lot of the good things that City do. Something does feel a little bit off with De Bruyne this season. He was very angry during the World Cup, and I feel he's still quite angry now when you look at his face when Man City are playing. I
was sort of confused. I wasn't. I think, his pass success rate has gone down. It's 78.9% this season. The lowest he's got in the Prem was in 15-16 season, 78.3. And all the other seasons it's been in the 80s. So, there is a slight decline in his pass success rate. I don't know if it's because he's trying different passes because he has got a different striker in Haaland now. Yeah. Whereas last season, he had more false nines, you had the likes of, Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, who weren't really that target man that Haaland is. So potentially, he's trying different things. But as I said, chance creation, he's, still very much up there in Europe's top 5 leagues. He's got the most key passes. He's second only to Messi when it comes to assists. So he's still doing the business when it comes to providing the goals for Man City. But there was a slight decline after the World Cup. There was a lot of frustration, I'm sure. Belgium didn't have yet another not a great campaign. So maybe it's just Pep's way of motivating players, calling them out. I'm not sure. But I think that's potentially the potential reasons why, there might be a slight decline in his past success. It's just changing, adapting to a different environment, I suppose.
I think Ciarán raises a valid point there, Jonathan, that, there is a different type of striker up there. And De Bruyne is someone, I always like it when a player, in some ways, if a player's got a lower pass success rate, because it means that they're trying something. So many players play it safe and play the ball sideways and backwards and their numbers kind of get padded. But you do visibly see that De Bruyne is one of the only ones at times that's trying to find Haaland. Haaland makes so many runs, and De Bruyne is the one that's trying to find him. So I guess his pass rate would be lower. Yeah,
but I think this is the whole issue of Haaland and City, that Guardiola's whole thing is about control. Guardiola's famous thing from Barcelona was that when his side wins the ball back, he says it takes 15 passes to get set so that you can then attack without fear of being countered against. And I think that's where City have been really good. One of the reasons they're able to stifle teams is that they counter the counter very, very well. But it's still the way that most of the few goals they concede come. It's the way they tend to concede goals in big games. When they have their little European slip-ups, it tends to be because of counter-attacking goals. I think Guardiola's become paranoid about that. And so he's always looking at ways to increase the control. But you bring Haaland in, he needs that ball played forward quickly. He needs that riskier pass. And I guess that criticism that Guardiola made of De Bruyne, it's sort of maybe a reminder to De Bruyne that it's not just about banging the ball forward. Now, City do get the ball forward quicker than they have done in the past. You look at the second goal they scored against Leipzig. That's a Kanji lumping it, too pejorative a term, playing a long direct pass, which Haaland then nods down to De Bruyne, who has the shot that hits the bar that Haaland follows in. There was that chance early on when it was still 0-0 that Ake played must have been a 70-yard pass that Haaland just got a toe to, and the keeper made quite a good save. So they do have that option. I think the issue is just resetting that balance. And you listen to the commentary on the Leipzig game, and people say, Haaland, he scored 5 goals. How can you possibly say he's made City worse? Well, just look at the numbers. Last season in the league, City scored 99 goals and they conceded 26. They played 26 games this season. You extrapolate out the figures, and they're on course to score 94 and concede 35. So that's a goal difference that's 14 worse than last season. So you bring in a great goal scorer and your team scores fewer goals and you concede more goals. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be a problem that's ongoing, but I think there is a process that City are going through of trying to just reset that balance. And I think what Guardiola said of Haaland, I said of De Bruyne was not just directed at De Bruyne, but a sort of general thing to his team of, just because we got this player where you can lump it, and if it's within 20 yards of him, it'll cause chaos. Don't think you can get away with that. You've got to be judicious in your use of those more direct passes. Use it when you can, but also be aware that control is still the key element.
Yeah, when Pep's saying something, there's always a message somewhere to someone, to his players, to his staff, or to the fans. He's always trying to get some kind of message across, Pep, when he speaks in the press. Let's do our predictions then for this one. The predictions are completely meaningless after Ben really just couldn't be asked to do his job with the predictions. So, Ciarán, what do you think for this one?
I'm going to go 2-1 City.
2-1 City. Jonathan?
2-0 City.
2-0 City, and I was going to go 3-1 to Manchester City. But I will say, Burnley might catch them early and go ahead. That's happened a few times this season at Manchester City, but Manchester City will still go on and win that game. Sticking with the FA Cup, we've got Manchester United v Fulham. Jonathan, Manchester United, of course, will be without Casemiro for a little while. Can they cope without him? It's looking like it could be a midfield of McFred again, going back to the heady days of the last few seasons.
It's not disastrous to have McTominay, Fred, and Sabitzer also as an option, with Bruno Fernandes ideally, or maybe Weghorst playing in front of them. But it's clearly not as strong as when you got Casemiro and Eriksen, and that's been a problem for United recently. I mean, Casemiro's on this incredible run at the minute that if you look at league games only, he had a run of 10 United league games where he was suspended against Arsenal because he got 5 yellow cards. He was sent off against Palace. He missed the home game against Leeds. He missed the away game against Leeds. He missed the game against Leicester. He lost 7-0 at Liverpool. Then he was sent off against Southampton, and he's going to miss the games against Newcastle, Brentford, and Everton. So there's a run of 10 games. That's pretty much as bad as it gets. The one game where you're not suspended or getting sent off, you lose 7-0. So that's... all the talk about him being one of the greatest signings ever, I think has to be tempered by that, because being on the pitch is a key part of that. So if you're not available, and particularly if it's not an injury, then that has to lower an assessment of your performance over the season. Having said that, I think the red card against Palace was pretty unlucky. That there was that one angle where it looked like he had his hand on Will Hughes' neck. You saw the other angle, and it's clearly he's just sort of giving a sort of push on the shoulder, which everybody was pushing shoulders in that melee. So I think that was a bad use of VAR, that they looked at one angle and didn't sort of make sure, didn't check that with another angle. The foul on Sunday against Southampton, look, it's a red card definitely. But he's just slightly overstretched into a challenge. It's slightly reckless. It's not some integral part of his game. He's a sort of incredibly violent player who has to check himself. He's just, been a bit unlucky with the first one. The second one, it's one of those things. If you play in midfield and make tackles, it will happen to you every now and again. So it's a quirk, I think, rather than necessarily a massive problem with Casemiro. But clearly, it's a problem for Manchester United.
Yeah, another midfielder that struggled with discipline so far this season, Ciarán, is João Paulinho, one of the signings of the season, who we've raved about many times on this podcast. Fulham have been a completely different beast without him in that midfield. That they've really struggled. They've shipped goals, so it would be great for them to have him back. And actually, in terms of this game, with Casemiro missing and Manchester United having trouble in midfield, him coming in could be the difference maker because it will just give them that bit of control that they don't have without him.
So they've obviously 5 games in all comps where he hasn't played, and in that time they've conceded 12 goals. They've only won one of the games, which is against Hull in the FA Cup as well. So it'll be a massive boost to have him back. And in fact, it was the game against Man United in the league. He put in one of the best performances. I know they, of course, lost in the end, but he made 9 tackles that day, which was the 3rd highest made in a Prem game this season. And there's a few players from Man United that were obviously going to be missing this weekend who put in a very good performance. One being Christian Eriksen, who, of course, scored the goal and got the assist for the other. And was the man of the match that day. He'll be missing, and we already talked about the other midfielders are going to be missing. So it does look like the midfield battle might sway towards Fulham, which may potentially sway the game their way. And of course, even the likes of Garnacho, who scored that day, he's potentially missing as well. So these injuries are mounting up for United, and having someone like Paulinho back, who's so key for Fulham in that middle, dictating play, might just swing the game their way.
Yeah, success this season, Jonathan, for Manchester United probably would have been a cup and finishing in the top 4. They've already got a cup. They're going to finish in the top 4. There's this chance now to get multiple cups, and I think maybe because they're kind of marooned in 3rd, I don't think they're going to finish lower than that. I don't think they're going to finish higher. They'll really go heavy at the cup competitions now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quarter-final of the cup, and they and City are the obvious favourites for the cup. So I think when you get to the quarter-final, you don't mess about with the cup. They even with the injuries, their squad is big enough. I think the really tough spell of the season for them is past in terms of games, when they had the Barcelona games and the Carabao Cup final, plus the Liverpool game, and yeah, they did end up running out of steam there. And maybe you saw the thinness of the squad, that they struggled a bit against West Ham in the cup and had to bring on the big guns in the end. I suppose maybe you get into an equation of which is worth more, the Europa League or the FA Cup. But I think once you're in the quarterfinal, you just play it to win it. And Casemiro will be back eventually. So I'd be amazed if there's anything other than the strongest side Ten Hag can put out. I'd be interested what team he puts out at Betis later today. We're recording this on the Thursday morning. That he seems to have suggested that he's going to put out a very strong team, which when you 4-1 up against Betis, who are not the strongest side in Spain, I think that's a game where you probably can afford to rest people. But I don't think you go about resting people against Fulham in a cup quarter final.
No. What do you think the score's going to be then, Jonathan?
1-0 to United.
1-0 to United. Kieran?
I think Fulham might sneak it 1-0.
I think Fulham will give them close game. But I think Manchester United will just be too strong at home. If it was away, I'd have a different answer, but I think Manchester United to win 2-1. Let's turn our attentions to the Premier League, what we usually do, then the bread and butter of the podcast. It's Chelsea v Everton on Saturday tea time. Kieran, has been a switch in system. Well, there hasn't really been a switch in system. Chelsea have kind of gone back to what was so successful for them in the past. They quite often play 3 at the back because of Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva's not there now, he's injured, but they've been playing 3 at the back and they've looked better.
Yeah, they've switched more of a 3-4-3 formation in the last 3 games in all competitions. Obviously, Fofana and Koulibaly have come in, and to be honest, they have looked quite secure at the back, and they've actually been, getting results, which has been escaping them recently. They've been scoring more goals as well, and their general attacking play has been better. It's almost like they've had this, given some more of their players more freedom to go forward. And, their shots per game in March alone is 12.7. For the rest of the year, it was 11. So, there is that difference. And as I said, they're actually winning games now. Even their defenders are actually supporting the attack as well. I mean, Fofana's scored, Koulibaly got an assist. Chilwell's got an assist as well, and a goal. So, I think it is helping them in an attacking sense and a defensive sense as well. And I think it allows some of their other players, such as Enzo Fernandez, to get forward more as well, keep them much more secure defensively, and allows him to, use more of his attacking assets, which is so key to, of course, Argentina at the World Cup. So yeah, I think it has benefited them a lot. And even Koulibaly's look, a much different player, much more the player that we were known for at Napoli. In the 3 games he's played in, he's only been dribbled past once, so it does feel like he's stepped up a lot in the last few games and almost stepped in as the leader in that back 3.
Yeah, all those defenders that they spent money on in the summer, Fofana, Koulibaly and Cucurella, that's been the back 3 at times, Jonathan, and they've all looked far more comfortable in those positions.
Yeah, they have. I mean, 3 wins in a row since Thiago Silva got injured. I don't think you can blame Thiago Silva, but maybe one of the reasons other players struggle to settle around him is because of his lack of pace now that he's 340 or whatever it is. What is he, 38 now, 39?
He's older than me.
I mean, God, that is old.
I mean, that's telling.
Maybe they did end up having to sort of amend their positioning because of him. So in some ways, it might be the worst thing that Potter's hand's been forced, and he's had to change that, and maybe that reliance on Thiago Silva actually was something that was causing them problems. The only thing you'd say about this shape, this 3-4-3, is that I'm not really sure. I know Mudryk's played through the centre in it, but that's not his. Yeah, it's not how we've seen him before. They've spent 120 million quid on Mudryk and Madueke. Where do they fit in? And I'm not really sure that they do. So that again leads to that question of when they were spending all this money, were they actually spending it to a plan, or were they just signing lots of young talent? But for now, things look a lot more positive for Chelsea. 3 wins in a row. I don't think they were playing that badly in the spell when they weren't picking up points. 8 of those first 9 league games after the World Cup, when they only picked up 10 points, but 8 of those 9 games they had the better XG. So they have just started to take a few chances. Havertz, I think, is playing as well as I've seen him play in a Chelsea shirt. It's probably too late for them to get top 4 in the league, but they can at least make sure they're in the Europa League and at least sort of get a bedrock in place for next season.
It's weird because if you speak to Chelsea fans, I know a couple of Chelsea fans and have worked with a couple of Chelsea fans. They talk about Thiago Silva like if he's not there, Chelsea completely fall apart. They can't play without him. He's so good. They absolutely love him at Chelsea. So it's interesting that he's come out and actually they've picked up results because that goes against, I think, what the Chelsea fans were thinking.
But I think back to that game away at Brighton when they got hammered earlier in the season, and I was with Thiago Silva playing in the back 4. And they were absolutely all over the place defensively. And I thought then it was because he was too slow to play in a back 4. And then, they had so many iffy performances, and he was the one who looked calm. He was the one who was controlling everything. So I sort of think 2 things can be true at once that seem contradictory. So I think he probably has been the best defender this season. I also think it may be that the other players play better when he's not there, and they've had to take on a bit of responsibility, and they're not constantly covering for the old man, to put it in its bluntest terms. They've got to learn how to play without him because he's not going to be there forever. So, I think it's probably for the development of Chelsea, it might not be the worst thing that he's out for a little while.
Yeah, and they've got that settled midfield pairing now as well. Kieran, they've also got, Chilwell and Reece James are allowed to do the things they're good at in this system. But Kovacic coming back in as captain next to Enzo Fernandez. It's a nice little midfield pairing, that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be working. 2 of his top-rated performances this season have come in the last 2 Prem games. He obviously scored against Leicester, which was his best-rated performance. And then the second best-rated was the one against Leeds. So, obviously, having Fernandez next to him is bringing the best out of him. And in a way, potentially, it might be making Fernandez play better as well, allowing him that freedom to go forward, allow Kovacic to cover, potentially, again, allowing Fernandez, as I said, with the defence, to have that full freedom to support the attack. And potentially it could be seen as their best midfield pairing, I'd say. I don't think, Mason Mount or anyone like that would come in there. And obviously we've seen how important he is for Croatia at the World Cups. He was so key, the last one and the one before, to them getting to the semi-finals and the final. And, he played quite a big leadership role there. So, he could do the same here for Chelsea. And, it seems to be very popular with the Chelsea players as well. Like, there's been reports saying that, the minute they heard he was captain, Chelsea players were fully supportive of that. And Obviously, as it's not all been positive for Chelsea this season, in and amongst the players. So, it's obviously quite a positive to have him in there and performing well.
Yeah, and Everton are moving up the league. A couple of good results, Jonathan, but their better performances and results seem to come at Goodison Park. At some point, they're going to have to do something away from home, aren't they? Although you get the feeling it probably won't be this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, they've only picked up a point away from home under Dyche. The 3 wins have all been 1-0 and all at Goodison. They haven't scored goals, 5 goals in 7 games under Dyche. So, look, if they win 2/3 of the home games from now at the end of the season 1-0, that'll be enough. But ideally, they would pick up some points away from them. And they're not the only team at the bottom who struggle away from home. You look at Forest as well. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, you just thought, yeah, maybe Everton can pinch something here, but just that little improvement in Chelsea's form. You think that anything Everton get here is a bonus. They are building. They are starting to play better. I think Damari Gray coming into the side, although he's not an obvious Dyche player, I think he has added to them. Calvert-Lewin, I think possibly will be fit, but whether he starts or not, I'm not sure. So if it is Damari Gray playing up front again, at least he's got pace. The issue Everton have, if you think back to the Everton game, it's a very Liverpool game when they played Ellis Sims up front. And I'd seen Ellis Sims at Sunderland where he scored 7 in 17 earlier in the season. And he's a big lad, but he's not a target man. He can head the ball, but he's quite good technically, and he needs players around him. So I feel a bit sorry for him that he was dragged back from his loan right at the end of the Lampard era. He got his one start at Anfield where he was playing 40 yards from any other Everton player. They were whacking the ball long at him. That's just not his game. He looked out of his depth. And maybe he's not ready for the Premier League yet, but he's a lot better player than we saw in that game. And it sort of feels that this is sort of 6 months of waste for him when he could have been playing regularly at Sunderland, especially with Ross Stewart being out, in a style of football that would have suited him better. But I think it's a problem Everton have. They just don't have a centre forward other than Calvert-Lewin who's never fit. So they need to sort that out. And one of the impressive things I think about Dyche is that he has inaugurated or has launched this audit of Calvert-Lewin's lifestyle to see what it is that's causing him to get injured. So he's looking at his car, he's looking at his furniture, looking at his diet, looking at everything to see if there is something that's causing these repeated injuries. And that, I think, is a sign of a smart manager who doesn't just look to solve problems, but looks to work out why the problems are occurring in the first place.
Yeah, a fit and healthy Dominic Calvert-Lewin completely transforms Everton. Although Dyche has come in and done a good job, Ciarán, and if you look at the algorithm, it's actually the Burnley Old Boys Club that are helping Everton out. They've even drafted Michael Keane back in from the cold, and he's playing at the moment. So he's got his old boys around him, and he's kind of harnessing something.
Yeah, 100%. His top-rated players at Burnley since top-rated players at Everton since Dyche took over. 3 of the top 6 are, Dwight McNeil, James Tarkowski, and Michael Keane. McNeil and Tarkowski are the top 2. So they're obviously, they obviously understand his system and how he wants to play this 4-5-1. And they're even getting amongst the goals. They've scored 5 times, of course, since Dyche come in, which, it might not be great, but they've been amongst the goals. McNeil scored 1, Tarkowski scored 1, and Michael Keane's even got an assist. So they are, of course, very key. They understand how he wants to play and how he likes to play. So they're people who he can rely on to do, the way he likes to play, which potentially is different to how Everton were in the past. It's always hard to pinpoint what their game plan really was. Everton's it's a bit of a weird team in the sense of the last few years, but, potentially this might be their new identity. Even if you look at McNeil, he's averaging 1.3 crosses per game, which, having someone like Calvert-Lewin, who you spoke about, would be very beneficial. And maybe that's where the goals come in. In the game against Arsenal in his first game, you could see how much of a threat Calvert-Lewin was, how many headers he was winning. So you can imagine he would be, very key to Dyche if, as you said, he was fit. But obviously, as you said, those 3 ex-Burnley players are obviously, they understand the system, they've integrated it well, and they're making the best out of it. And once they have that fully fit squad, it could start ticking. But even when you look at the likes of Alex Iwobi, for example, he's having one of his best seasons in the Premier League, so he is starting to get the best out of other players as well.
Yeah, Tarkovsky and McNeil have both scored winners for him as well, which is obviously pivotal as that's got them the bulk of their points so far. Let's finish this game then with predictions. I'll do mine first. I'm going to go Chelsea 2, Everton 0. Jonathan?
1-0 to Chelsea.
And Kieran?
I'll say 2-1 to Chelsea.
2-1 to Chelsea. Let's finish the podcast then with the just a minute section. It is FA Cup weekend, but there is quite a few Premier League games as well. Jonathan, you're up first with Nottingham Forest against Newcastle.
Yeah, Forest no win in 5 now after that run where it looked like they were pulling away from danger. So they are sinking again. They're only 2 points clear of the drop. So those worries well and truly back. The flip side of that is they are unbeaten in 9 at home. Home form is what will keep them up if anything does. Newcastle had gone 5 without a win before they beat Wolves. Probably a little bit unlucky in that game to get away with Nick Pope not conceding a penalty, being sent off early on. But 70 of the 90 minutes, they were the better side. And I think crucially for them, Almiron looked sharp again after he come off the bench. And given how they've been lacking goals, only 4 goals scored in the last 7 games, a fit and firing Almiron is key to them. Forest have got 10 players out or suspended. Johnson and Wood being out with strict attacking options. Henderson and Hennessy both out as well as the problems in goal. Newcastle won it 2-0 at St James early in the season. They're going to go 1-1.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same. I was at Forest earlier on in the week talking to a former Sunderland player and former Newcastle player, Jack Colback, so I can't possibly predict Nottingham Forest to lose, so I'm going to go 1-1 as well. Kieran?
2-2.
2-2. Nice. Kieran, big one. Villa v Bournemouth.
Yeah, so Aston Villa's 1-1 draw last weekend with West Ham meant they were 3 games unbeaten now in the league. The longest they've gone is 4 games, so obviously they will level it if they get a draw or win here. They've won 6 times at home this season. Only 7 teams have won more often on home soil. Bournemouth recorded a win over Liverpool last weekend, which of course included Salah missing a penalty. They've only won 2 of their last 5, but their 2 defeats were against the top 2, Arsenal, Man City, and the other a draw against Newcastle. But the win against Wolves the other week was their first away win in the Prem since a 3-2 win over Forest in September. Only 3 teams have picked up fewer away points than Bournemouth. But Bournemouth actually got a very good record in the Premier League against Villa and won 4 of the 5 meetings, Villa winning the other. Including their 2-0 win back in August. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here.
I'm going to go for 1-0 to Aston Villa. Ollie Watkins on the score sheet again. Jonathan?
Yeah, same. 1-0 to Villa.
1-0 to Villa. Brentford against Leicester. Jonathan, for you. Brentford, of course, winning last night, moving themselves up the table.
Yeah, there's something odd about this Premier League season that Tottenham seem to lose every week and they're 4th. Palace seem to lose every week and they're 12th. And they have been all season. And Leicester seem to lose every week, and yet somehow they're still not in the relegation zone. They're 16th. But they are level on points with Bournemouth, who are 3rd bottom. I think the pressure really is starting to mount there now. I'm still not sure Brendan Rodgers' job is under threat because of the financial situation at the club. But they've lost 5 games in a row now in all competitions. And in that time, they've only scored twice while conceding 10. The familiar injury problems are all there. Justin, Tielemans, Christensen, Bertrand, Vestergaard are all injured. Wout Faes is suspended. Brentford had that 12-game unbeaten run. That came to an end against Everton, but their 2-0 win against Southampton has them up to 8th. Only 7 points off 4th with a game in hand. So they should get European football, if not Champions League. It was 2-2 on the opening day of the season, but I've got this as a 1-0 to Brentford.
I'm going to go for 3-1 to Brentford. Kieran?
2-0 to Brentford.
2-0 to Brentford. As I say, these predictions are absolutely pointless because we've got no league table anymore, but I guess people may still like to hear what we think will happen in the games. Kieran, you've got the Gareth Bale or the David Howells derby, depending on which way you look at it. It's Southampton against Tottenham.
Southampton come into this game after a 2-0 defeat to Brentford on Wednesday night. Obviously, since Ruben Selles has come in, they've won twice, drawn 1 and lost 2, including last night's game. At home, they've only picked up 9 points, which makes it the worst in the division this season so far. For Tottenham, they obviously had a difficult week, which saw them go out of both the FA Cup and the Champions League and go 3 competitive games without a win. But they returned to winning ways on the weekend with a 3-1 win over Nottingham Forest. But away from home, they've only won 5 out of 13. Tottenham have only lost one of the last 5 meetings, and they, of course, won 4-1 back in August. So I've got them down to win 2-1 here.
Yeah, I think they'll win 2-1 as well. I think Son's got a very good record against Southampton, but I think it'll be close. 2-1 to Tottenham. Jonathan?
1-0 again to Tottenham.
1-0 to Tottenham. Jonathan, you're finishing with Wolves against Leeds.
Yeah, repeat of the 1973 FA Cup semi-final, the lesser semi-final, not as big as Sunderland beating Arsenal. Leeds won that one. I'm not sure they're going to win this one. Huge game at the bottom, obviously. 4 points between them. Wolves 3 points clear of the relegation zone. Leeds a point from safety. Wolves only won one of the last 5, despite the improvement in Lopetegui. But to be fair to them, they did win the 2 before that. Their problem is scoring goals. They've only scored 3 goals in those 5 games. Leeds have also got goal scoring problems. They've only won one of the last 13, and they only scored 8 goals in the last 11. You wonder if Javi Gracia has got to, at some point, let them off the leash a bit. There was an improvement, I think, against Brighton. 2-2 draw there, with Bamford getting back on the score sheet, which is huge for them. Kaladzic and Diego Costa out for Wolves. Sarabia's a doubt. Cooper, Forshaw and Dallas all out for Leeds. Leeds won this 2-1 on the opening day, but I think this will be a 1-0 home win for Wolves.
2-1 to Wolves from me. Ciarán?
2-1 to Wolves.
2-1 to Wolves as well. And you're finishing with Arsenal against Crystal Palace, the Ian Wright derby.
Since the loss to Man City, Arsenal have gone on a 5-game winning run in the league. They've picked up 32 points at home. Only Man City with 34 have picked up more. Obviously, they play tonight in the Europa League, so potential injury doubts could come through there. Palace are on an 11-game winless run after losing to Brighton last night 1-0. It's the longest any team has gone without a win in the league this season. 9 goals. They've only scored 9 goals away from home. Only 3 have scored fewer than them. But when it comes to the meetings with Arsenal, 5 of the last 10 have in fact been draws. Though Arsenal did win on the opening day at Palace, and depending on tonight's result, maybe coming into this game with confidence. So 3-1 to Arsenal.
Yeah, I was going to go 3-1 as well. You used to fancy Palace, but a big away games, but at the moment they just look absolutely devoid of anything. Jonathan?
2-0 to Arsenal.
2-0 to Arsenal. And that wraps up this week's edition of Edge of the Box. Thanks ever so much for watching, and thanks to the guys for joining me as well. Do subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on, and have a look at socials as well, where all the clips from this podcast get posted. We'll be back next week to preview. No, we won't, because it's international break. We'll be back in a few weeks to preview the Premier League. So look out for us coming back. Enjoy all the football of the weekend, and as ever, stay safe.